Welcome everybody to today's episode of the Empower Performance Podcast. I have a special guest, RJ Krauss. Welcome up on Instagram, strong third range. And I was gonna say you must have blown up recently with that one post that you had. So,
Yeah.
I want to dive into that in a little bit. But if you could just do like a quick background, your athletic background, and how you got into training and all that, please introduce yourself.
I started when I was younger. I played football, and I played until college, but didn't play much. Scout team hero, really. I didn't. I didn't put in the effort I should have put in. Like I had a good, solid athletic base, but I didn't put in the preseason effort and stuff that I should have. I was always like halfway through the season getting in shape. But yeah, I played baseball too in college. My friend introduced me to CrossFit, and that's when I knew I wasn't as fit as I thought I was. Yeah, like I used to hate on it so much, but then I did it and I was like, "Wow, I suck." And I threw up after the workout and it was something like body squats, pull-ups, but yeah, that got me in love with Olympic lifting. I never really trained hardcore at a
Mhm.
CrossFit gym, but my athletic background actually really began when I was little and we played neighborhood games, climbing trees and capture the flag and all that stuff. But yeah, it was pretty much that. And now I'm just kind of freestyling and having specific things I want to get good at and chipping away at those.
So I was gonna say that you mentioned like just being active in all these different sports when you're younger. I think that's an important thing for people to do. I feel like we're kind of missing that in today's world. Maybe parents don't feel as safe with their kids running around neighborhoods and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I've had this conversation of long-term athletic development for a long time, and I've also had a CrossFit coach who's on, and like you were talking about, some people hate on CrossFit, say it's dumb, say this, say that. There's a lot of complaints about CrossFit, and I think that sometimes people get too far onto that bandwagon, they forget all the wonderful things about CrossFit.
Yeah.
And that it is actually a blend of, gymnastics, Olympic weightlifting, you have cardio, you have all these different things. So it is true strength and conditioning and it is well-rounded. I think that people actually could benefit from doing such a well-versed, well-rounded style of training.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that people don't realize is that there's a huge skill component that goes into it, especially with the gymnastics movements and the
Oh,
Olympic weightlifting movement. And I think that's one thing that you show on your Instagram account very, very well is like your Olympic lifting journey, but also just the mobility required to be able to do something like that. I think people think it's just all about strength and muscling it up. They don't realize how
yeah.
technical it is, the timing, the sequencing, and also just to get into those like deep ranges for like a full clean, for example. Can you speak to what the Olympic weightlifting journey has looked like for you, how you like got into it, how you've progressed through it, and then why do you do it?
Well, I just love Olympic lifting. I mean, it's kind of one of those things. I get addicted to things I'm bad at. I'm like, I shouldn't be bad at this, or like, I think is badass. And I mean, everybody loves a good power clean. It actually
Mhm,
took me probably like 3 years to comfortably like squat clean. Like when there's
mhm,
like that's yeah, the CrossFit thing. It's great. I mean, it depends on the coaches, but yeah, it's like it took me so long to be able to do that comfortably. Squat snatch was another story, but yeah, it all depends on if the coaches are uh good and people take their time to get their mobility down. But I remember in the beginning in my first training job, I would torture myself on a foam roller to like get that T spine and overhead mobility because that took a while to get. Without that, I mean, I would have probably been less inclined to be really mobile because you know Olympic lifting, coordination, power. It's like the power stuff is easy and fun and is more accessible. But if you want to
mhm,
get really good at Olympic lifting, you're going to spend a while just, chipping away. And it's probably been a part of my programming for 10 years now,
mhm,
at least a little bit. Like I never just completely abandoned it, even if it was just like, I don't know, one moderate session a week. But yeah, it was definitely a battle, just like getting all the ranges and everything. But once you have it, Olympic lifting's great at keeping those ranges.
mhm,
People don't realize wrist mobility, lat mobility, T spine. I made a post about this actually. It's like ankle, knee, hip. It's like you have to have
mhm.
everything. And it's
Sure.
one beautiful, thing about Olympic lifting. You see, I post things like about Olympic lifting, people like the risk to reward ratio is not good on that. I'm like, okay, if you try to do a full like I don't know, a 1 rep max squat clean when you've never front squatted before, yeah, that's a risky exercise. But
Mhm,
if you've trained it and you're working on the parts, and like I've taught people Olympic lifts, and we usually do power cleans and then squat, and then you do work on the parts separately and then put it together slowly. But
mhm,
yeah, it's definitely it's a battle, but it's a worthwhile. And to get good at it, especially at a young age, like you're saying, doing things at a young age, gymnastics, even lifting, I think that myth has been busted pretty good. Like you can
mhm.
lift when you're younger. I mean, obviously you probably want to spend more time playing. Try to get my nephew
Sure.
deadlifting. He doesn't care, you know what I mean? But he ripped up body weight one time. I had him over and I just put like, I don't know, 65 pounds in the bar. And I think he was lighter than that. And he double underhand grips and just lifts it up. I'm like, that's
Wow.
awesome. But yeah, it's definitely something you want to get used to early, but I'm ranting now. So
No, no, I kinda wanna go back into talking about, like, the actual skill acquisition, the mobility, and all that stuff. I think the reason why people will say risk to reward ratio or whatever is because they don't understand that it is its own sport. It is very technical. Mobility demands are huge. This kind of argument I think is lazy from performance coaches or people in general. If you wanna say that's not worth it because it's risky, I think you're usually just thinking about, like, a high school football weight room where they're throwing up the ugliest hang cleans you've ever seen in your entire life.
yeah,
There's no technique, no regard to technique or mobility constraints or anything like that, and people
yeah,
are, yeah, probably gonna injure themselves, throw their backs out, or they land with a totally vertical,
yeah,
forearm
yeah,
or something like that. But then on the flip side, you have, coaches who say like, "Oh, like, it'll take too long to teach," or something like that. It's like, "Okay, but you're talking about long-term athletic development. Why is this isn't something that you want to teach over the long
yeah,
term? You can't start, like you said, with the derivatives and just increase over time." I understand if it's different if you have, like, a summer program, you have 4 weeks, someone's gotta get more powerful, you're gonna do trap bar jumps over doing, like, Olympic lifting, that's
yeah,
fine. But if the argument is just like, "I don't like it," and, like, that's the true argument underneath, "I don't like it, I can't do it very well, I don't know how to teach it," then just say
yeah.
that as opposed to, like, "Oh, it's just not worth the amount of time it takes to learn." You could say that about any sports skill, and you have these kids trying to learn how to throw a baseball faster, for example, or, score a free kick if you're playing soccer, like, those skills, you'll spend time learning, but you're not gonna spend time learning skills in the weight room. I just don't understand the argument the best when it comes to that.
And just like, those other skills, you're not
Mhm.
great at the first time you do it.
Sure.
That's why it's perfect for a warm up. Even like,
Mhm.
even if you wanted to learn, I don't know, a side quest was being better at soccer. Just dribbling against the wall and running back and forth is a good thing. And same thing with Olympic lifting, like moving, like maybe a light power clean. You're getting some wrist mobility. You're getting some
Mhm.
power. It's not like you have to, go close to your max. But even snatches, you're getting a lot of internal rotation, muscle snatching. That's like a
Mhm.
great little accessory to sneak into a warm up and have it benefit you, and eventually get more comfortable with it. And it's like, your first 1,000 reps are going to be ugly, but then you start putting pieces together, and it also is a good diagnostic of what you're missing too. Because like
Mhm.
if you're missing wrist mobility, that's not going to be good for you long term. Like push-ups could hurt. Even you're
Mhm.
more likely to injure your wrist, or your T-spine's missing mobility, and you notice that during the snatch. It could be good for a coach to be like, okay, maybe we got to do some T-spine stuff. So it's like using movement as a diagnostic, I think is a smart move. You can try things. It doesn't have to be crazy, but then you know more about yourself or your athlete, and you could build off that.
Mhm. I like the movement as a diagnostic thing. This will get maybe into a controversial, but just a little bit of a, yeah, just maybe a debate that some people have about movement screens, for example, right? So, like,
Mhm.
FMS is the main one, they do the overhead squat assessment, and you see sometimes, like, world-class Olympic weightlifters would get a 2 out of 3
Yeah,
on the
yeah, yeah.
overhead squat assessment, but then you put a bar in their hand, it couldn't be like,
Yeah,
better, that's good. So I just think, like, okay, that test specifically may not be good. It doesn't mean you should never screen. I don't know if that's necessarily what I would make the claim. But I often find I'll do a screen just to have, um like a rough idea of someone's abilities, a little bit of mobility, a little bit of strength stuff right before I write their first program, just another starting point. They tell me their
yeah,
goals, we work along that way. That's fine. I'm not gonna spend a whole hour doing a screen and all that stuff and tell them, "Oh, like, you're missing 1 degree of IR in your right arm or something." I feel like it's a little too specific, and I get a lot of information in that first workout. And
for
like we were
sure.
talking about, yeah, so it's just I don't know, I feel like sometimes you can overcomplicate it. It doesn't mean don't screen, it's just I don't know. There's definitely that balance, and I appreciate you saying movement as a screen, as a
Yeah,
diagnostic and all that stuff because you see if someone's doing squats or if they're doing a hinge or something like that, you get to see really fast. Does this move because they don't have the skill, or is it like, does it move or not move because they lack the skill? And you can coach it up. And if they can't, sometimes it really is a limitation. Then you have to find
yeah.
alternatives.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Like, yeah, I test ranges and,
Mhm,
some movement capacity, like strength capacity, but
mhm,
it's like you could basically know from squat and certain things how good of a mover they are, and then from there you build off that. Like sometimes, I mean, you're trying to sell yourself as a personal trainer.
sure.
You want to make sure they know how inadequate they are. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, because I started at a box gym, which is really
Mhm,
good for learning how to, deal with people. Because school didn't, it teaches you stuff, but
mhm,
doesn't prepare you for working with a human being really at all. I mean, the muscles and bones, you could nerd them out, but you can't, working with somebody is a totally different story. Humans have all these crazy history and everything, and they have different movement things. And you first see somebody moving bad, you're like, I don't know what the hell is going to fix this guy. But you learn and learn and learn, but that taught me the basic protocol. But yeah, having a whole session based off of it just to tell somebody that they're out of shape. It's good for selling, But I mean, yeah, it's not useless, but it could be incorporated because every workout is a screen too, in a way. Like, oh, your
Sure.
squat looks better today, your squat feels better today, or whatever it is, and maybe we should back off there, maybe we should go there. You're gonna have to kind of assess every session if you're working one on one with somebody, is what I noticed. And remote clients, they're gonna have to communicate with you. If not, it's on them. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's
Well,
interesting.
so it's interesting yeah, it's interesting you say that because, the whole inadequacy thing, and then also, like, you can screen all you want, and then someone, during a session will reveal something to you that, like, maybe they wouldn't answer in a questionnaire, maybe the screen wouldn't have tested it. So an example is, I had a client who I wanted him to do push-ups on the ground. Normally, the issue is lacking wrist extension. His was he couldn't open his hand up all the way,
Oh
and I was
shit.
like, "Why is that?" He's like, "Oh, because when I was, I don't know, 30 years old, I punched through a glass window and, like, cut the tendon, had to have it reattached, and so now you can see the tendon like this,
Oh my
you can't open his
gosh.
hand for it, and I'm like, "Okay, this changes a lot." Like,
Yeah.
you never
You
thought
still
I asked about your, like, injury history, and you're like, whatever, you have a sprained ankle when I was 11 or something like that." You don't tell me about the
yeah.
the tendon.
And I have a tendency to get out of my hands.
But, yeah, so there's that, and then the other thing too is the inadequacy thing. I'm glad you say that because I think there are a lot of coaches that will use technology or screens. Whether it's performance training, they'll say, "Oh, look, your jump was 26 inches. You trained with me for 3 months. You've never trained before. It got to 28 inches. I'm a genius. I gave you 2 extra inches, even though it's just added some training." Or like the
Yeah.
screen too. You say to someone, "You're so inadequate. Oh my gosh, don't move. Your spine's gonna, burst into flames unless you train with me, and I'll solve the problem."
Oh
My
yeah.
business is called Empower Performance. I want
Mhm.
to make people feel they're capable. I really am against that style of coaching where you
Yeah.
show people everything that's wrong with them, not everything that's right with them.
Yeah.
And to me, it's all about stacking wins and all that stuff. So I appreciate you kind of calling that out because that totally is a thing. And
Yeah.
I do wish people would call that out a little bit more. Maybe some people do, and I just don't see it enough. But yeah, I like to show people glass half full, not glass half empty in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you compare yourself to other people, you're
Mhm.
gonna run into problems. Like I run into that with the internet. I'm like, wow, I am a weak piece of crap. Like, I see, like, okay, I just saw an 11-year-old match my back squat. You know what I mean? It's like, or, it's just constant like that. And you don't know what's going on. So it's
Mhm.
like, if you focus too much on that and imagine, being even in a worse place trying to get yourself out, it's like, that's going to be discouraging. And I haven't seen progress. Like, I'm only seeing this much progress. It can discourage you and you could be, less likely to want to do it
Mhm.
and compare yourself to yourself. It's cliche at this point, but that's really what it is, you in your real life and stacking wins and having that perspective where you're like, okay, where was I yesterday and I'm going to be better, like, oh, I got this new ability, cool. Like, and people don't
Mhm.
enjoy it, and sometimes I catch myself in that too, where I'm not enjoying like a cool new thing because the internet or something. It sucks, but you gotta, that's I guess the part of being a good coach, or a coach that wants to empower somebody and not just take their money, is showing them, yeah, a lot of people have lost this, but you can get it back and it's going to be so much cooler. I try to emphasize too, like with people that are out of shape, it's like the cool part about being like really out of shape or in a bad shape, you know, is when you get better, people are going to be asking, you're going to inspire so many more people than somebody
Mhm.
like me can do. Because I see people all the time where they're like, they lost 40 pounds. People are like, what'd you do? I want to know. It's like, that's kind of a good meaning to keep you going forward. Because
Mhm.
it's like, oh, I could barely even squat on my knees. I thought they were done for, but now I'm like, I had a PR 135. It's like compare yourselves to the internet's, that whatever, but then you tell people that and they see it in you and they're like, wow, like I can be better if they did it. I don't know. I always like
No,
thinking about that because it's like it's not all
yeah.
bad. You got to look at the bright side there.
I think the other thing too is that, like, beginner gains, I think if you point them out enough, they come so thick and fast, right? This is
Mhm.
where you get, like, intermediate and advanced gains that, like, really starts to slow down. I tell people, neurological versus physiological, your software versus your hardware. You'll get the software gains first, your body gets more skilled and coordinated.
Yeah.
It may get more comfortable doing something, but, like, sometimes I don't wanna, like, take that secret away from them. I want them to think, "Man, I'm making crazy gains." So, I had a
Yeah.
client today I just posted, she deadlifted 205 for a triple, and it was, like, such a huge thing for her to break that milestone of 200 pounds. I didn't
Awesome.
tell her what the weight on the bar was until afterwards, and
I love
she's like,
that.
"I don't know how much." I said, "200." She's like, "Well, 200," such but she started at, like, 50 pounds, and we've been training for, like, around a month, right? There's no
Mhm.
way that, like, she's actually made physiological adaptations of 150 pounds in a month. It's just, like, she's like, "I'm nervous about lifting a kettlebell." She gets more comfortable, we just add a little, but that's a win on its own, and, like, that's just
Yeah.
it's almost like taking off as an airplane just to, like, get going. It's like, you
Oh
gotta
yeah.
sell those wins as much as possible, and, yeah, and so you're talking about someone who loses 40 pounds. It's good to teach them that. I try to teach people that 45-pound plate is called a plate, and a 25-pound plate is a half plate. They'll say
Mhm.
2 plates, 2.5 plates, 3 plates, 4 plates, and make that their next goal every time. "Oh, you got a
Yeah.
plate? Cool, let's get a plate and a half. Let's get 2 plates." And I just try to make, like, those tiny goals and just constantly, "Oh, you had success, you had a win, you had this, you had that." Once you get to those intermediate gains, this is another thing I like to talk about is, that's where it gets really frustrating for people, and then they think, "Ah, what's wrong with me? Why am I not seeing progress anymore?"
Yeah.
It's like, you're actually at the point where your body's changed. That's where I start to share the neurological versus physiological, and,
Mhm.
they're harder earned, but then they're, like, more lasting, more impactful.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I guess it's a fun conversation. I know I definitely went down a rabbit hole there.
No, I love that stuff though. I love talking about that because it's so true. And
Mhm,
it's like kind of using the effect for somebody instead of against them. Because like some people hate on the placebo effect. Oh, it's just a placebo. It's like just a placebo if it works. And it's like it's not even like manipulation. It's just like I'm trying to be smart at what information I tell somebody. And if you're on the flip side of that, you'd want that
mhm,
because then they get they have positive association with the gym, and
mhm,
now they're gonna
mhm,
feel like that's just part of their life, then you really change their life. But if you're like, oh, well, stalled out, you're doing things wrong. You got to hammer them about what they're doing wrong or whatever, and not just informing them. The positive association isn't there. And I don't know. I like the way you treat that. That's good. That's solid.
mhm. I had, my cousin was on the podcast recently. He works with a lot of, professional soccer players in Europe and, in a return to play setting, and he was saying that he really tries to avoid priming negative thoughts in the sense that if they're doing something, he won't be like, "Oh, does it hurt? How does it feel? How did this? How that?" He almost wants to take them out of their minds and just, like, have them be focused on the task. Of course, he needs feedback. He says, "If you have anything you wanna share with me, always tell me how this is feeling and all that stuff." But he's
Hmm.
just, like, it's cautious. If someone is, like, very hesitant, he doesn't wanna give them the opportunity to look at all the negative things that are going on. And so you
Yeah.
might just be like, "Oh, cool, look, your weight's gone up. You have a knee injury, and then, you're rehabbing, and maybe you have 200 pounds leg extension on one leg and 100 pounds on the other, and you get to 120, and, like, the disparity shrinks and all that stuff. You just say, "Wow, look, you're 20 pounds stronger," whatever. But it's just,
Hmm.
it is really powerful. I think that's something that coaches actually provide value in. People talk about AI replacing coaching and all that stuff. I don't know if AI will be able to necessarily have the conversations in a human way or just know
Yeah.
how to frame or how to build this story in people's heads that they belong and they can do it and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe. But, I think
Yeah.
people still want that, so, um, I did wanna ask you more specifically about your training style. I think that what you do makes sense. I think that it is unique. I think more people should be doing it. I think people might look at it and be like, "It's weird, I don't get it," in the sense that, like, you are hitting ranges that people would say are dangerous or they're scared of. You made that one post, you're trying to break your shoulder. "Whoops, I failed."
Yeah.
Now your shoulder's more resilient. And I think that, like, that makes sense as far as the principles of training and adaptation and all that stuff, ton of sense, but everybody else will just say, "Your back shouldn't do this, your shoulder shouldn't do that." Can
Yeah.
you explain how you got into that? How do you sell people on that, that's actually worthwhile?
Well, yeah, I mean, like you said, the adaptation doesn't just stop at, the basic movements, but
Mhm,
how did I get into it? I mean, I had a bunch of injuries or just limitations myself that I got
mhm,
past, and then I found it with clients too. One thing is I had hip impingement. I thought I was just running out of space. Like, acetabulum, femur, boom. I was like, okay, maybe I'm just not meant to squat deep. Found
mhm,
out my couch stretch is really bad, and I hammered that. Got freed up my hip flexors, and then one time, like, I fell deeper into the squat than I ever have. I thought, like, I tore muscles and stuff, but I kinda broke through my old shell, so to speak, and, I was sore for, like, 2 weeks, but after that, I was able to squat deep forever, and I was about to I can get a power lifter squat, but I wasn't able to get ass to grass. And also my ankles,
mhm,
had chronic sprains in high school, and I would just constantly tape them, braces, high tops, whatever I could do. And it definitely limited my performance for sure. But I was dealing with that for a long time. Like my big toe, it would barely bend. It would barely bend. And my
mhm,
ankles had pretty much, that 4-inch knee over toe test thing, the ankle
mhm.
dorsiflexion test, nowhere near to my toes. And my hip mobility was pretty decent, so I had to make up for it with that. And that's why my butt is so big and my quads aren't so big, is because I had no dorsiflexion, so movements would just be all butt. But learning that and seeing stuff with my clients too. Like, there's one story, and sometimes I'm like reluctant to share it because it's such an extreme thing. It's like bold claim. So I didn't really go over my history. I trained at an Equinox at a college. So I went out of college. You have an exercise science degree with medical science emphasis. You either go to more college or you go become a trainer. So I was like, I'm not going into more debt, becoming a trainer. Worked there for a while. I want to fast forward to the story, which is I was part time at a Massage Envy where I was stretching people. Worked for like a stretch. It's kind of like a stretch lab, but like the first rendition of it. And I was stretching this woman out, and I was working with her. She's like, "Oh, I feel great. Can you work with my husband?" And he's in so much pain. He's like, he can't do anything. And in my head, I didn't even think like, "Oh, did he go to a doctor or whatever?" I was just like, "Yeah, what I do is low risk. I've never made somebody worse. I communicate with them." So I saw him. He was feeling better and better, and he was like 70% better. I went to his house separately to train him out of that because it was kind of like lead building. And I went to his
Mhm.
house and I worked with him, and I had him doing deadlifts and squats, and it wasn't like crazy weight or anything. I was just getting him the movement patterns, probably 30-pound kettlebell or doing like sets of 10, 15. And then he's like, it's still coming back more than I want it to, even though it's like 90% better. It's like, why is it not completely gone? I'm gonna go to the doctor. He goes to the doctor. They do an MRI. Turns out he had a ruptured disc. And the
Mhm.
doctor's like, I don't know what's going on, but like whatever you're doing, keep doing it because we'll have to do surgery otherwise. And that was a big eye opener for me. And
Mhm.
how it can affect your, things on that level. I didn't like understand that was even possible. But
Mhm.
between that and making my own gains and seeing other people, like most people are terrible movers or they're in pain when they move, when they start. This is a fact of the matter. And even myself, and I was an athlete, like I couldn't move certain joints well.
Mhm.
And there's the old trope where like everybody used Vince Carter. Oh, Vince Carter can jump so high and he has terrible ankle range. So that means you don't need range. And I just kind of bought that without thinking about it. And then one day I was like
Mhm.
actually thinking about it. I'm like, well, if you have more range, you can produce more force and you're less likely to, get hurt because, if the muscle's really bound up and you are go into a range really hard that you're not used to, whether it's because you're tired or off balance or whatever it is, then that's how muscle tears and, that kind of stuff happens. So I kind of just built off that. I mean, it was obviously like learning the Olympic lifts is going to make you pay attention to mobility more if you
Mhm.
want to get good at them and all that stuff. And then I worked with, range of strength.
Yeah, 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 Lucas
Yeah.
Hardy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I was like getting my clients mobile and stuff, and I haven't tortured myself like that in a while. So I was like, I owe it to whoever I work with to get the splits. So I got the splits and I got like did some of the odd lifts because I had
Mhm.
all the prerequisites for those odd lifts. And it really like, taught me that like I'm what 33 right now and my athleticism is only going up and
Mhm.
I'm having less restrictions and I'm recovering better and all that stuff. And I think there's just more than people think, more value in, making sure you have the ranges and you own them. And I'm in my own little bubble because I have no coworkers.
Yeah.
I have my clients, me, and Instagram pretty much to like, inspire me. And I'd see all the people kind of doing what I do. That's why I didn't start my Instagram until like, I don't know, beginning of this year. Because I was like, oh, everybody knows this is obvious. And then realized it's not obvious. I was just in a bubble. But to me, it's like, okay, you get the injury like prevention gains. Obviously, sport performance and health are going to be different, but there's going to be overlap.
Mhm.
It's like in general, you want to have these basic, you want movement freedom. You want
Mhm.
to decrease the chance of injury because you're not playing your sport or you're not exercising, period. So you're going to be less healthy if you get injured. And you want adaptability. You know what I mean? Like, I
Mhm.
think that if you're adaptable to multiple things, you can get better at whatever you want to get better at. And
Mhm.
it's going to make you better at the activities that you love because your range is going to be better. You're going to be more dynamic of an athlete. You're going to have more options to move through. And it
Mhm.
doesn't all happen at once, but like incorporating bits and pieces on top of like the, hinge, push, pull, lunge, like those are the foundation of it. But some people don't even have that. And you have to make sure they get that. And, I've seen great results with myself and my clients just building off those things because a lot of people skip steps too. I mean, myself included back in the day, you see, I never forget one of my buddies in high school was deadlifting 405, and I never even touched that weight. And I don't even know how I pulled it, but the environment, everybody, I pulled it and my back was sore for like
Mhm.
2, 3 weeks. But afterwards, I felt like my spinal arches are actually bigger right now. But like, I didn't take the time to learn it right. And squatting too. I thought I squatted 405 in high school. No, I didn't. It was a half quarter squat. When I
Yeah.
went deep, my numbers went way down. But like, you get away with that for so long. You get away with a lot of bad things for so long. And then one day you tear your Achilles or you tear your hamstring running or whatever it is, and then you're like, "Oh man, I'm just not lucky." It's like, okay, well, let's maybe think about this. And is there anything you could have done? I always think about it like that. Is there anything I could have done to prevent that? Or
Mhm.
at least decrease the chance of that happening. And
Mhm.
so, from all those perspectives, and even if you're just trying to build muscle and look good, it's like the more range you use, the more muscle tissue you're using, the more muscle you're
Mhm.
going to build. And you're gonna be able to do more exercises because you'll have more movement freedom. It's like, "Oh, lateral raises hurt my shoulder, I can't do them, they're bad for you." It's like, well, maybe you're trying to do too much too soon, which is mostly the problem, like, younger people trying to lift run into.
Mhm.
Like, recently, I had some guy that like, "Oh, I can't build muscle," and I'm doing lateral raises, and I'm like, how much you doing? Some of your workout." He's like, "Oh, I'm doing 17 and a half." And I'm like, I don't even really do lateral raises at that weight. It's like, I mean, sometimes I might do that if I'm feeling it, but like, I make sure that I'm feeling in the right spot and
Mhm.
the right things are working rather than maxing out on a, trying to get
Mhm.
8 bull crap reps with like heavy weight and I'm feeling at my traps and I'm not even feeling it where I want to
Sure.
feel it. It's like skipping steps is something that's natural, you want to get going and you see other people doing it and it's like, well, you don't even know if they feel good. But yeah, I mean, I'm just ranting now, but you kind of get the picture of
Yeah, no,
what I'm getting
I
at.
I agree with what you're talking about, like, so there's a lot of different directions you can go, and I wanna go back to talking about, like, the ankle sprains and wearing the high tops and all that stuff. Do you know who Paul Favorites is? He's a basketball, like, performance trainer, PJF Performance.
Oh yeah, yeah, I
Um,
know him.
yeah,
I followed him a long
he
time ago.
so he had a story of how he went to the Philippines to do, like, a basketball camp, and all the kids had low top shoes, or if they're playing in the streets, they'd play barefoot, and then
Hmm.
he was just asking all the coaches, he's like, "What do you guys do for ankle sprains?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" And, like, they're like, "None of the kids get ankle sprains." Um
That's awesome.
One, it just talks about resiliency by actually, like, adapting to a stress, but then the other thing too is it talks about how, like, you have a lot of knee injuries with people who, like, they use ankle braces or high top shoes and all that stuff, and it's like,
Mhm.
"Well, why is that?" Because the joints are, like, just a bunch of links in a chain, and if you restrict at one joint, the next one has to, like, do more. That can be a
Mhm.
weakness thing, that can be a mobility thing, but that's why you should train, all your muscles, all your joints, and all different ranges and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you ask too much of a certain joint, right? So if I
Mhm.
don't have a lot of hip mobility and then I also, tape up my ankles or something like that, and I have to make a hard cut where I need
Yeah.
actual hip rotation or something like that,
Yeah.
what's gonna pick up the slack? The knee, and then I'm gonna have this huge injury. So that's one of the directions I wanna go into, but then also just the benefit of, being strong through a full range of motion like you talk about, I believe in that. I did wanna talk about, like, quarter squats and when it's acceptable and all that stuff. So I had a track coach and she says, if we just hit these positions in sports and we went over those positions, that might help with sports performance. I agree with that. But for the average person, yeah, full range on almost everything.
Yeah.
Why? Because it helps with mobility, but also there's a huge difference between passive, mobility and active mobility or, passive range of motion, active range of motion.
Yeah.
And also, there's some people who are hypermobile and then really weak in those deep ranges, and they still get hurt. So why would you not try to get there's almost every justification for doing full range strength training. The other thing too, you're talking about building muscle. Yes, deeper ranges, bigger stress, bigger hypertrophic response. But also, they talked about recently. There's like this huge thing in the past few years of training in lengthened positions is better than training in shortened positions for
Yeah.
like adaptation for hypertrophy and all that stuff. So would I rather do a preacher curl or rather like do it on an incline bench leaning back with my arms hanging by my side when I do the,
Yeah.
uh, the dumbbell curls and all that stuff. So I think there's a lot of reasons that people should do this. I was gonna ask, how does your programming look? How would you? Because you talked about adding in warm-ups or maybe your accessory work, but how do you there's so many joints, so many move right? How would you go about it? Is it just someone's preference? Is it someone's specific needs? Do you try to mix everything throughout the week? What is your process for that?
It's more like, depending on the person, like, what are their goals is one thing, but also just trying to chip away at weak links that affect them the most, and you're not
Mhm,
gonna be able to fit every like, a perfect, mobility for every single thing, but, like, say somebody is just learning a squat, we're going to do some mobility stuff to make sure that looks good. And maybe we won't be able to fix their overhead movement perfectly, but we might sprinkle in a set or two of pullovers or something. Or if that
mhm,
if that hurts them, maybe just like a lat stretch and use like time between hard sets, like
mhm,
maybe a hard superset to do a little mobility work. So it's like, okay, we might not be able to train that hard right now, but you have access to the range, getting yourself comfortable with that range. And I noticed that the just like sports performance, the more advanced you get, the more specific your mobility has to be. Kind of
mhm,
like you're learning the split. Like when I was learning the splits, I was hitting hard plateaus, so I had to really focus on the end range strength stuff. But when you're just getting started and you're just getting like initial ranges, like say you have tight calves, just stretching it, you do but it would be ideal to do like loaded calf raises and stuff. But if you only have so much time, just stretching it, you're going to use that loaded range during a squat.
mhm,
You're going to use that range during other movements. And even just like your day to day life, you might use it more unconsciously so you can keep it more. So it's like you get newbie flexibility gains too. Programming, it really depends on the person, and their limitations, but once you the beauty of doing the style of training is once you gain the new range, maintaining is much easier. Sometimes I have clients that, they really need to move better to even get more output done. Like, they're so bound up that, like, it's hard for me to get them to train hard
Mhm.
because they can't move very well. So, some people are just like that's just where their life has led them right now.
Yeah.
So we have to go through a little boot camp of having them move better while doing whatever we can do to get them their heart rate up and get them challenging their muscles. But we have to do a lot of end range stuff and mobility work. And then it goes from more like a mobility session to a training session as their program or the months and years go by.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's individual. I don't know if I answered that perfectly, but I kind of
No, I think that
brushed
that's
over.
a good answer because I think it's difficult to give just one hard and fast rule if you have 2 people that are totally different, different goals,
Yeah,
different needs, different mobility limitations.
yeah,
I was gonna ask along that I don't know why this is a thing, I've had a rant about this before where there's a lot of this or that conversations when it doesn't need to be, it can be this and that conversations.
yeah,
And even in the world of mobility, you have people talking about flexibility versus mobility. We'll talk about unloaded versus loaded or something like that. Some people will
yeah,
say if you do, just a couple warm-up sets and you do a couple full range sets, that's all the mobility you'll ever need. I don't know if that's absolutely true. I don't disagree that it's a valuable thing if you're short on time.
yeah.
And then they'll say that passive stretching is totally useless, or vice
That's
versa. They'll say, "Oh, just passive stress and don't do this." I think that there's a time and place for all of it. Maybe you do actually try to hold, uh, a middle splits for 2 minutes at a time or something like that, or front splits for
yeah.
2 minutes at a time. Maybe there's a situation where you do Jefferson curl, but, like, what are all the different methods that you would use to try to enhance someone's flexibility? How do you find value in them? How do you try to explain the value of it to clients as well?
So, like, yeah, time constraints is always going to be a thing, especially if
Mhm,
you're working with somebody one on one and they're busy. So
mhm,
you got to just do what you can do and you can do it. But there is value, a lot of value in passive stretching, in my opinion. I
mhm,
mean, recovery and there's intensities to stretching, just like strength training. Like, if you're going
mhm,
close to your max and sitting into that range, you're going to need recovery time. So, like, planning it in line with your workouts. And if you're doing something intense, you have to do it less frequently, like the newbie gains things I was talking about before. The further you progress, the more you're gonna have to actually hammer it like it's a strength session and let it recover. Yeah, loaded stretching is needed for a lot of people, like myself, where you spent a whole part of your life being athletic and getting your muscles really strong and tense, then sometimes it's hard to even sink into the stretch without the extra load. But
mhm,
if it's somebody that, that has a lot of muscle, like, they're more lax and they have a good passive range, but their active range is crap, then you're going to spend more time building the strength. And
mhm,
I'd find it like I test sometimes hamstring flexibility with stretching, 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 but they're not doing the end range strength on the opposite side, like straight leg hip flexion kind of thing, then they're gonna hit a wall and never return. And then they're just gonna stop and be like, oh, my hamstrings are so tight. But also, and I know I'm kind of going on tangent, but like you want to check the other side too, always. I mean, that might be obvious to you, but some people I might not be. And that goes for the shoulder, the hip, but the most obvious one is like if your hip flexors are tight, then you're never going to get flexible hamstrings. You're going to get to a certain spot, but you're going to be to the point where it's like they always still get tight again because your hips are getting pulled forward and your hip flexors, they're doing too much. But that goes for your ankles, that goes for your shoulders and your wrists. It's like if you're limited on one side, you're limited on the other. So you got to check both sides, check the strength because sometimes people like, yeah, they have passive range, but they can't actively move into it. And everybody's going to be a little different in what they have to hammer more, but you got to find which part of you is most imbalanced, which one is in terms of strength and mobility. Look at their history, see if they have a history of, heavy lifting and they need that extra load to get into it. Because sometimes, like, even like a Jefferson curl, it might be unsafe for somebody to do a loaded Jefferson curl if they're brand new and they never strength trained. But if they're strength training for years and they have so much build up in their hamstrings and glutes and erectors that, they need a 45-pound barbell to even get into that range. But yeah, and sometimes it's like a nerve thing, kind of, not kind of, it is like where like an elephant walk is kind of needed, and people feel it behind their knees during a hamstring stretch. And what's that? And then like a pike tib raise might be the deal. You know what I mean? Because there's nerve, I'd say, strength and flexibility. They all have their role, and depending on who you are, you're going to need it the most. But
mhm.
if when in doubt, hit a little bit of all of them, and whichever's the worst, then you're going to want to do that. But then always you want to incorporate actively moving to the range as well. You know what I mean? Where it's like instead of a pike leg lift, like a Jefferson curl for your hamstrings or a loaded hamstring stretch for your hamstrings. But yeah, you got to check both sides too, because I've seen people where they're like, I've been stretching, 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 and it's not improving, but they haven't tried to strengthen the range. They haven't tried to strengthen the end range and the opposite. It, and you got to make sure if you're coaching this, you got to make sure you give clear instructions and that you have to make sure people hold themselves to it because if you half-ass it, it's going to be like strength training. It's, oh yeah, that was a hard
Sure.
set. Yeah, that was a tough set. How tough? It was pretty tough. It's like, did you really push it? And then you like, if you had a gun to your head, how many more could you got? Oh, I could have got 10 more. It's like, okay, well, it's like you gotta all this stuff though, you have to build a level of body awareness. And like
Mhm.
I was thinking about when you were talking about your cousin and how it's like he wants to ask them how they feel less. And I want to do that, but sometimes I have to ask a lot more in the beginning so people
Sure.
get aware of what they're doing. Like high level athletes, yeah, that's I'd say that's a little bit of a different story.
Mhm.
A lot of bit of a different story. But in terms of like people just trying to understand what they feel, because I didn't understand this until I worked with a bunch of people, but it's kind of hard for them to tell what they feel because they haven't spent the
Mhm.
thousands of hours I have analyzing every little bit of myself. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So there's a time and place for it, but I definitely like thought of just having them let it rip. But it depends on their stage because I have also have clients that it's like I don't want to overanalyze what they're doing because it's looking good, they're feeling good. Okay, their knee might have bothered them a little bit in the first set, but we warm up and it's fine. We're strengthening it. We might hit a little extra like stretch for the muscles that are affecting that after. And if needed, have him do soft tissue work on his own or something. Cause I still find value in soft tissue work too, by the way. Like some
Mhm.
people just poo poo on all that. Like one thing crapping on static stretching, which I think definitely has value, but
Mhm.
like it's all a tool. Like soft tissue
Mhm.
work isn't good or bad. It's going to make your knee feel better so you can move. You don't have to do it forever. But some people are like, foam rolls are useless. This is only used for a foam roller and they're doing something different with it. Well, I'm like, okay, I get what you're saying. And some people overuse it, but it doesn't mean it doesn't have any value. It's like,
Mhm.
if you're a hammer, everything's a nail. It's like,
Sure.
be just try to understand how it might fit and why it might help some people, even if it is just purely psychological, like some people think to, you know what I mean? It is neurological. I won't doubt that. But
Sure.
it's like, people don't do things for the most part that doesn't help them at all. Like if it was just
Mhm.
completely useless, if it was like, I don't know, I
Well,
can't
so
even
I'm
think
with
of an
you on that.
example.
Yeah, I'm with you on that because, like, with the foam roller, for example, I think the reason why people, like you say, kinda, like, shit on it a little bit is because the benefits were oversold for so long. They're like, "Oh, if you're not foam
Yeah.
rolling, what are you doing?" They're
Mhm.
saying, like, "Oh, you have to do this. It'll break up adhesions. It'll whatever. It'll
Yeah.
change your tissue quality." And it's like, it won't do
Mhm.
that. It is mostly neurological, like you're saying, but even like you said with placebo doesn't mean that it's not worth doing. I
Yeah.
almost never do it until I feel really kinda, like, sensitive in a certain area, and then I'll just try to find that area, feel it out, feel comfortable with that area, and then I can, like, move on, and then even if it's just placebo, and I talk about this with clients sometimes, the biggest things for recovery is, like, sleep and nutrition, those are the main things, and then, of course, like, stress management, including the stress of your actual training, that you're not overdoing it all the time. You need to leave
Mhm.
space for adaptation. Stimulus, recovery, adaptation, people need to understand that. But,
Yeah.
the other thing too is that, like, it doesn't mean that, like, getting a massage or taking a bath or any of those things that are placebo are useless. It's only unwise to do that if you're still eating and sleeping like trash and, like,
Yeah.
overtraining. And then it's like, "Oh, I'll take a pill or I'll, use icy hot and that'll make it all better." It won't. But if you're doing
Yeah.
everything, then the extra stuff, it's I don't have a problem with it. It's just how you kinda prioritize and see it. But man, you said a lot of stuff that I really wanna, like, go down all those different directions. As far as the front and back side of a joint, I absolutely wanted to talk about that, but then also it kinda had to do with how we're talking about the joints above and below. So, like, knee could be an issue because of the hip or the ankle, right? The
Yeah.
front and the back side, I think, is really interesting because that took me a long time to learn, is that, yeah, passive range on one side, active range on the other side. You
Mhm.
can't shorten both sides of a joint at the same time. Like, where would it go, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Like, the hip flexor and the hamstring, for example, is a good example. If someone's trying to increase their, like, kicking height and they need to have, like, more groin flexibility, then maybe you also have to work on your, like, active hip abduction. How far can you purposely separate the legs, but then also how far can you lengthen it? And I find that
Mhm.
that is a huge disconnect that a lot of people have, and that is a gap that you wanna try to close. That's a nice way to teach it. You basically just say, "What joint motion do you wanna have?" Okay, you gotta work both sides. Strength on one side, lengthen on the other side.
Yeah.
And then why not do both? I don't wanna have, like, tremendous hip flexion, terrible hip extension, right? I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
not wise.
yeah. Yeah.
But you do eventually have to do
Sprinting
everything.
needs
Yeah.
both.
Oh, yeah, exactly. You have to have extreme versions of both, so why not train both? And that's you just made that post too about, spinal extension, that people do crunches and sit-ups all the time, and they'll never actually extend at their backs. I'm glad you said this because you talked about feeling spots and teaching people what to feel. When people deadlift right off the bat, they'll be like, "Oh, I feel it in my back." And it's like,
Mhm.
"Okay, do you feel it at the joints or do you feel it at the muscles?" They're like,
Yeah,
"Oh, those 2 things that go down along the spine." I'm like, "Those are your spinal erectors.
yeah,
Good."
yeah,
We're
good,
working
it's
on
more of that.
yeah, but it's like you're strengthening something that's not strong, and once it gets strong, the actual, like, joint issues may feel better. So I don't just, like, 100 miles an hour right off the bat get people to do that. Even with core stuff, I'll teach core stability before core, movement. But then it's like, okay, you feel comfortable doing like a plank and a side plank and a anti-rotation press, phase one. Cool. Now we're
Yeah,
gonna do some rotation. Now we're gonna do some side bend. Now we're gonna do some like full range extension. Even just like an ab mat is such a huge thing just to teach people in a stretch position or doing back
yeah.
extensions. But yeah, I mean, you showed the back, and it's good to teach people these are muscles. It should feel like two snakes and all that. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, I definitely appreciate
It's like
yeah,
protects
speak
the
to that too.
spine, yeah.
Absolutely, I mean, it literally looks like it's a meat shield around the
Yeah,
bones,
exactly, yeah.
but yeah, I like that you mentioned that because, sure, with a high level athlete, you don't want them in their heads too much, for example, but if it's somebody who has no body awareness whatsoever, they need to understand what's actually, like, good pain versus bad pain.
Mhm.
The whole phrase, "No pain, no gain," I wanna just, like, rewrite that so that it's
Oh,
good pain
yeah,
equals
I
good
know,
gain.
I have the
Yeah.
same thing, yeah, what are you gonna say?
Yeah, but good pain equals good gain because it's like there is
Okay,
such thing as bad pain in the gym, do you know what I mean? It's like, you
yeah.
should know, is it a sharp pain? Is it something that, like, I don't know, as opposed to, "Oh, it just feels like it's a strain and it's uncomfortable." Lifting will be uncomfortable, but where is it
Mhm.
uncomfortable? So I totally see value in those kinds of conversations.
Yeah, yeah. I just say because some clients say that, I'm like, "No discomfort, no gain. Pain, bad.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
painful, no discomfort, no gain." Yeah. What was yours again?
It was, good pain equals good gain.
Yeah,
And,
okay,
like,
I like
where
that.
are we targeting? Yeah, yeah, so but then I was gonna ask as well, so you do have a very unique style. You had that post the other day where it's, like, all the different ways you use a GHD because most people might do just a back extension on it and not think that you can do spinal bending in every single direction. You
Yep.
can train rotation with it. You can train where you have your torso hanging off, your legs hanging off. You can
Mhm.
do the leg curls on, like, all these different variations. Where do you get the creativity to just see a tool and say, "What is everything I could possibly do with this tool?"
Yeah, I'd say I just have like since I have my own little lab here, I have my own little,
Cool.
slice. I have spent many of days just like, in here just messing around with stuff, testing stuff out. The odd lifts were really interesting for me because, all the different ways you can use a barbell. Everybody's like deadlift squat, but you got a hack squat and you can put it behind your back. You can zercher. You
Mhm.
can do all these different things and it just kind of opens up your eyes to like, okay, tools are tools, but they can be used in a different way, And a lot of the work training I do one-on-one is in people's homes, so it forces me to, get a certain level of creative, you know what I mean? I look around like, "What can I use as a target or what can I use as an anchor?" You know what I mean? So, a lot of that stuff, but just a lot of movement exploration because after you get out of that whole boxed, only do these things, like most people get introduced to lifting in a bodybuilding format, back and bis,
Mhm.
chest and tris, do these things, that's all you need, that's it. Once you, like, escape from that cage and realize that movement is movement. You see break dancers, you see gymnasts. It's
Oh,
like
sure.
you see these amazing athletes, and are they special? No, they trained like this. They trained to get
Mhm.
this way. And I feel like a lot of the people that I follow, and more people I think are wising up that like there's so much more value for your muscles, but also for your abilities. I don't know. I'm more of an ability guy than a looks
Mhm.
guy, but then the looks
Me
come with
too.
the ability. So it's like, what I mean? Like you're gonna build bigger muscles, but you're gonna be able to do cool things too, and your body's not gonna
Mhm.
break. It's like what like I think it's a little out of vogue now to just be giant and walk around like this. It's like, you want to be able to use your body. You don't want
Mhm.
to play a volleyball game in your family reunion and tear your ACL. It's like or tear your hamstring or something. But yeah, it's just part of it was force and part of it is just the way my brain works where I just like doing new things and Instagram has its good and bad, but it's
Yeah.
it's inspiration.
Yeah, so going along that so you do mobile personal training?
Yeah, I go in people's homes a lot of it, and I have my own thing here. So, but
Yeah.
I live in like Hopewell Junction. The city's like an hour and a half away from me south. And there's more people that most of it is because I worked at a physical therapy place and I got a
Mhm.
client from there. I was going to either go to PT school. So it
Mhm.
was after Equinox, went to a physical therapy place to work. So I was going to become a physical therapist. But then I
Mhm.
picked up clients from the floor and they kind of just spread the word down there. So my client base was there and I was just going with the flow. I wasn't trying to force anything. I wasn't advertising. They just like, spoke to each other and then I ended up building business down there. But I get as many clients this year as I get offers for. because I don't advertise. So, yeah, so mobile
Yeah, so
training is
I think I
mostly
also do mobile training, and, the reason why I was gonna say that it's interesting, you're talking about what can I anchor, what can I use, and all that stuff. Like,
yeah.
I've started trying to be better about posting some of the stuff my clients do. One of my clients will do step ups and box jumps onto his coffee table,
Oh
or
gosh, hope it's sturdy.
yeah, yeah, but it's just interesting. Yeah, it is sturdy, it's like it's a really heavy duty one, but the
Yeah.
idea is just like, it's just like you have to be creative, and sometimes having limitations just through necessity creates, an environment for creativity and exploration and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes having less is more, so I'm also a mobile trainer. I do have my home gym. I'd say maybe 70% of my training is mobile training, 30% maybe at the house, maybe a little bit less, but, like, I just started my business with, like, some power blocks in my trunk and, like,
Yeah.
a fold-up
That's
bench, and it's
awesome.
like, what can I do with power blocks and a fold-up bench? You know, it's like, okay, some people think you can't get a good workout if you don't have a bar and a rack and all that stuff, and I can't bring a bar and a rack into everybody's house, right? So then I
Yeah.
was thinking about, okay, well, if you can, I have these 2 power blocks that are, 90 pounds each, so under 80 pounds. If you can rear foot elevated split squat, 180 pounds, is that theoretically equivalent to 360 on a bar for a back squat? I know the math isn't perfect, but I was like, you can still get pretty damn strong. You know what I mean? And then I
Oh
see
yeah.
people like Will Rattel doing skaters with 2 dumbbells. So it's like that back foot doesn't touch anything. I'm like, all right, if I ever get one person to do one rep with the 90s of a skater squat in either hand, you passed, you won, you've done it. You are
Yeah,
now
yeah.
strong.
I guarantee if you go to like if you go under a barbell, you'll have a fine time. You'll be fine.
Sure.
If you can do a weighted pistol or yeah, a skater squat with 90 pounds, yeah, you'll be good.
But
Force is
so
force.
along those lines, we're talking about creativity and innovation and all that stuff. You were talking about just like inspiration from outside of just the traditional things. You talked about abilities over aesthetics. I think aesthetics are cool. I think training for aesthetics is cool. But yeah, I've always preferred, I'd rather be able to do a pistol squat and a muscle up, and sometimes get the backhanded compliment of you're stronger than you look, which dagger to the heart. But I'd rather be able to do that than like you see some of these guys like you're talking about walking around with like invisible lat syndrome and they can't scratch
Yeah,
their back and they get winded going up the stairs. And it's like all that for
yeah,
what? Like
yeah.
my training styles, I wanna be prepared for just about everything at any given time. I may not be the it's basically Swiss Army knife training. It's like I may not be the best in
Preach.
anyone ever, but it's like I don't wanna ever, go rock climbing with my friends indoor and feel unprepared. I don't wanna go for a run or a bike ride. I do a little bit of, like, combat sports. I was a soccer player. At any point in time, I just wanna do all these things because 'cause they're fun, and I wanna be
Yeah,
ready for all of them. So I wish more people would see that as a good thing, and that's one of the things that I think CrossFit kinda did well was people thought I have to either be as big as possible or as strong as possible, and they thought
mhm,
about, like, nothing else, so it's either bodybuilding, powerlifting, maybe there's some people that mess around with Olympic weightlifting, but, like, it really was just those 2 things, and then also you'd
yeah,
have, like, women just doing the cardio stuff, and then CrossFit was a place where women could get strong and guys could focus on mobility and skill, and I
yep,
just think of teaching everybody that it's like, you can't have it all. I don't like the idea of, like, interference, like, it's almost overblown interference. It's like, okay, you're not gonna be the number 1
100%.
powerlifter in the world and the number 1 marathon runner in the world because like, the adaptations are too extreme and too different,
Yeah,
but, like, you can still be pretty damn fit and pretty damn strong, and I always think of, like, decathletes or CrossFitters as people who
yeah.
have multiple adaptations at an incredibly high level.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, people think that because they look at the extremes and they think it's the base, but it's like as long
Mhm,
as your recovery is good and you're not trying to do too much too soon, you know what I
mhm,
mean? Then I mean, I do that. I had go for at least 2 long runs a week.
mhm,
I try to hit 1 glycolytic and 1 sprint type thing like
mhm,
outside of that. And it doesn't seem to interfere much if at all, especially now that my ankles are fine.
mhm,
Yeah, CrossFit definitely and it made people know what working hard is because I didn't even know what working hard
mhm,
was, and I thought I did. It's like, what is this? But another thing that I wanted to mention about you said how like, yeah, you want to be able to do cool things. It's limiting. Like
mhm,
there's only how big do you want to get? How do you really
yeah,
want abs? And plus, even if what if your lifestyle or your life isn't going to be able to get ripped abs? And plus, you might not even feel good if you had all that. You know what I mean? It's like
sure,
that is good, and it's good to have goals like that. But at a
mhm,
certain point, you're going to hit a wall where it's like I don't even care anymore. It's like
mhm,
it's not going to keep your fire lit. And like
mhm,
knowing all these calisthenics moves and all this gymnastics and all the like, rock climbing is another one I want to get into. I
mhm,
you did a martial art. I did Muay Thai with one on one for uh it was like every Thursday at 11 for like 2 years straight, and that was so much fun.
oh,
And it was like that was a hip mobility drill. You know what I mean? That was some end range
mhm,
strength. We did
uh-huh,
like these bouncing teep drills where it's like you had to
mhm,
kick one, kick, kick. You had to do that for like 50 reps in a row every session, and just doing that one thing made my hip flexion better. Like first time I did it, sucked at it every time,
mhm,
and then by the end of my like 2 years working with them, he had to move away, so I couldn't keep working with him, but one on one at least. It was like, one day a week of concentrated hard effort, you can make some serious gains in whatever it is. And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe if your whole training was based around handstands, you'd get there faster than somebody that isn't. But there's a certain point of diminishing returns too. It's like,
I mean,
you do something too much and it's like your body needs to recover and it loses its novelty, loses its flair, and you can still get better at it at a pace that's pretty fast as long as you are persistent with it week after week. But yeah, I went on a tangent there. But either
I wanna
way,
go yeah, I wanna go off that though because it gets into this interesting conversation of, like, interference versus well-roundedness, right, or specialization,
mhm,
and if it's actually, like, worthwhile. If you only chase one adaptation or you only do one sort of joint motion over and over and over again, you may have overuse, you may have these injuries. If you do multiple things, you may stay healthier longer, but something
yeah,
that people don't realize is it may actually benefit the thing indirectly that you're talking about. So, like, some people think, "Oh, well, if I do cardio, it kills my gains." Not necessarily true. If you have, like, better cardio, you may be able to push harder during your sets, you may be able to do more sets in a workout. Like, it's
mhm,
just I don't think people think
work
about it, but it also
capacity.
helps with your recovery, work capacity, all that stuff. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, if you go to the extremes, they may not work together, but if you, like, aren't going to those very, like, absolute specialist extremes,
yeah. Unless
they
you're
can
going to
be
the
su
Olympics.
yeah, yeah, exactly, but, like, that's the thing too is, like, I like the example of decathletes because they may not, on any of those 10 events that they do, qualify, for, like so they're not gonna be the 10 people running for 100 meters, right?
Yeah,
They're gonna be so, so close, they're gonna be closer than almost anybody else on planet Earth at that,
yeah,
and then have that for 9 other events, it's incredible, and that's the thing is
mhm,
the body's so adaptable, and people just need to understand that it's more of an issue of how much time do you have to dedicate towards training, and then,
yeah,
how much energy, your recoverability, and all that stuff, and that grows over time.
mhm,
But the other thing too, I like that you mentioned is, like, what if you pursue a goal for a certain reason, then you realize that I don't actually have the dedication to get there, or I
mhm,
get there, then what? I'm not actually happy with the life that I live. A lot of people
yeah,
wanna look at these bodybuilders, not understanding what these bodybuilders are putting themselves through. Nobody actually, most people don't want to pay the price to have the result that these guys are paying. They don't wanna train as hard as they want. They don't wanna eat as hard as they want. They want to take the drugs that some of these guys are taking. It's such an insane proposition. Some people say like, "Oh, it'd be cool to fight like Demetrius Johnson." Does it mean that you wanna train 4 times a day, 2 hours at a time, or something
quitting
crazy
a
like that?
week. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, like, that's
they
the
make
thing is you have to figure like
sacrifices.
yeah, yeah, exactly. You have to calculate, is the juice worth the squeeze? You know, that whole thing. I think that's something that people need to learn is don't get so hung up on social media. Yeah, like you were talking about, like, run your own race, progress over perfection, all that good stuff. But, yeah, some people just say, "I want this." They get there, they're not happy, and I like to tell people that my clients' first goals are often my second goals,
Uh-huh,
because if somebody says, "I want a six-pack," and, I starve them and we're, making them do 1,000 burpees, wherever to burn calories to get the six pack, and they feel
yeah,
like shit and they hate their lives and they feel all beat up and all that stuff. Is it
mhm,
worth it? So I always say that, like, my first goal is to improve someone's quality of life.
yep,
Give them more ability like you're talking about, give them more, like, powers. If you
mhm,
haven't
yeah, I
been
love
able to
that.
jump in forever and then you can suddenly jump on even a 12-inch box, what a win. Do you know what I mean? What does
Yeah,
that do for your confidence, for your longevity and all that stuff? But, like so I do have a client, he lost 80 pounds, he got a six-pack and all that stuff. I tell this story. But, like, the thing that made me most proud wasn't when he showed me he finally had a six-pack. It was he was telling me that, like, he played pickleball and he ran past the ball, like, missed a shot. So, but it's
that's
excellent.
awesome. He's so used to his old meat suit that he's like, "Wait,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
I'm
going too fast
what
now."
happened, yeah, he got superpowers. I did wanna ask you a little bit more rapid fire questions if you're okay with that?
Ah, rapid fire.
Actually, okay, so I have one more deep dive because we were just
Yeah,
talking about it. It was, longevity and performance. You were talking about, like, sports performance versus just, like, kinda general training and all that stuff, and people at different levels. I almost want people to view this conversation differently as well, where everybody in their own way should do performance training. It just has to be scaled to a person's entry point. So I think
mhm,
anybody can train like an athlete, and that's the whole conversation about superpowers. If you're 80 years old and you've never trained before, you're not gonna be doing triple broad jumps because it's too intense for a plyometric. But even
yeah,
just, like, footwork on a ladder, right?
yep,
To me, that can be their version of plyometrics, and you give them something that maybe they lost, maybe that keeps them from tripping that one more time, and it makes
mhm,
them live another year because they didn't fall, break a hip, and end up in the hospital, or they so,
yeah,
I like the idea of performance is longevity, it just has to be scaled, and I appreciate you talking about, by working with Gen Pop, and they may feel limited, and if we give you this ability, what can it do for you? So,
yeah.
I think that's a nice thing. If you wanna speak to that a bit, maybe.
I mean, yeah, and just having the like regaining confidence is another thing because I mean, ex-athletes either have too much confidence, or people that got hurt after their athletic career or were never athletes have too little confidence. It's like a lot of people think they're stuck with what they have. And it's like
Mhm,
our bodies are constantly adapting in every way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? Where it's like
mhm.
my coach in college used to say this, and I used to make fun of him for it. But I'm like, oh no, that was true. Either getting better or getting worse. And I'm like, well, he's got a point. It took me 10 years to figure that out, but no, he was right. But yeah, it's like I mean, you don't have to think of it that hard and fast, but it's like you're either working on qualities and your body's adapting in that way or not. Yeah, you might not be able to fail a clean and jerk like that, but it's like, are you going to be,
Mm,
if you slowly work on qualities that are going to make you less susceptible to issues and more able athletic? It's like, that's why I mean, strong through full range is the starting point, then power through full range is that's the next level through it. But it's
mhm,
like, yeah, and yeah, light, extensive plyometrics, a lot of people lose that ability, and so you can do that, and then you could just do more jumps and maybe do like a broad jump and, do something, maybe a sit to jump, you know what I mean? Where it's like not too crazy risky, but, we can see how much power you output, you know what I mean?
right,
Maybe sets of fast squats to a target, so you're not going as deep, but it's like
mhm,
expressing these abilities slowly over time and, sometimes testing your limits if you feel safe to do so. But it's like if you don't ever expose yourself to these different qualities, then you're going to lose them. Did you see my comfort zone post?
I may have.
The one with the circles?
I may have. I'll have to
It
go
was
back and
just
check. Yeah.
it wasn't that revolutionary. It was just a basic concept that I
Yeah,
made into a nice pretty chart. It was pretty much
yeah,
like there's the comfort zone is the little one, and then you got the challenge zone, then you got the danger zone, and then you got the no-go zone. It's like
sure.
that's constantly shrinking or going, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
danger for somebody, a backflip isn't dangerous for a gymnast, but squatting all the way down for somebody else is dangerous. You know what I mean? So it's
Mhm,
like it all depends on where you're at. And it's like you don't want to scare people, but it's like if you don't do stuff, you're gonna shrink until you can trip and break a hip. And
right.
it's all depends on the person's personality too, if they're competitive or you know what I mean, like whether what kind of information you give them, but
Mm,
or they're like more fear based. But it's just a concept that's worth kind of reflecting on is like, okay, what kind of abilities do I have now compared to years ago? And where do I want to be? And where will I be if I, just decide to hang it up and say, age and genetics, that's just it. I'm just getting old. It's like, that's not the attitude to have. It's like, even if
mhm,
it's small wins or small capabilities, it's worth pursuing. And then you won't be having to sit out the hike with your family or whatever it is, if
mhm,
that's the case. And, you can enjoy life more because everybody moving better makes life more enjoyable. I don't care. You have more freedom. You could sit on the ground. You could jump around. Sometimes I'm like out in nature and I'm playing like a kid, but it's like, hey, I want that ability. I want to be able to just screw around, hang one arm from a tree and do that. And who wouldn't? And I don't care if people think I'm stupid for doing that, but it's like, life should be kind of fun. Your body should be fun to be in.
I like you saying that because of, like, a couple of reasons. One is you have, like, endorphins after exercise. I think that's a biological response. I think that's um like an evolutionary response, do you mean? I don't
Yeah.
think that we have that for no reason. I don't think it's an accident that, like, you feel good when you, like, go for a run or something like that. You don't feel good immediately. You get your second win, you feel good, you stop, you feel amazing, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think there's something to that. But then, the other thing I was gonna say is you're talking about, like, basically being playful. Movement is freedom. I think that, like, even just, some of my clients, I give them ladder drills. I know people trash ladders, but, like, if that's all a person can do for speed, we're gonna do
Yeah.
that. Like, if that's their version of extensive plyos and all that stuff, we'll do that. A little bit of coordination, it can be fun and playful. You talked about Muay Thai, I got some, like, boxing mitts and all that stuff. We just do a
Yeah.
couple combos. I'm not preparing them for a fight. I tell them
Mhm,
that in
mhm.
advance, like, I'm not the most qualified for this. A little bit of coordination, a little bit of speed, a little bit of conditioning. Um, but if you look at, like, the Blue Zone documentary or, like, it's a docuseries on Netflix, there's a lot of, like, research articles about the Blue Zones, people that have the best longevity. A lot of it is like, better nutrition and then better movement and better social structures.
Yeah.
But, like, one of the things that you'll see these people doing is staying young and playful, like, at heart, and then also
Yeah.
maintaining mobility and speed. So I like that you said power through full range because that's something that people forget. You always hear strength and conditioning, strength and conditioning, strength and conditioning, cool.
Mhm.
Those are 2 buckets, but what about mobility and what about speed? What about the ability to uh, have strength through a fuller range, like you're talking about, but also at a faster speed. And that
Mhm.
is what power is at the end of the day, is just speed times strength. And you
Mhm.
just see like you're talking about people will be like, ah, it's just my old age. I saw videos of like 7-year-olds doing like, dragon flags and like muscle ups or doing like a pancake and then putting their forehead on the ground or doing like
Yeah.
high kicks and all that stuff. And I'm like, you're 70, you're 80 years old and you're doing this. Like that is such a powerful testament to training for ability and also training multiple qualities. I think that's
Yeah.
they always say you lose, speed twice as fast as you lose strength or thereabouts. I wonder if it's just because people stop training it, not because it's actually just that's how the body deteriorates. I think it's more
Yeah.
just, like, people will still need strength to pick up a package, but, like, you're not gonna get chased by a leopard and have to sprint,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So I'm curious if it's an environmental thing more than it's just a purely biological thing.
Oh, for sure. And like you talking about the people that live in more natural environments, like living
Mhm,
longer and stuff. It's like our bodies are meant to adapt, and we now in this day and age, movement is optional. That's why we
mhm,
exist. That's why our jobs exist. Movement is optional. You can go through your life and pretty much sit in a chair, lay down, sit in a toilet, and you know what I mean? Like, and you're not challenging your body. We're stressed in we're mentally stressed way more, and we're physically
mhm,
stressed way less. And
uh-huh,
that's not good for us. And yeah, the one thing I wanted to note about like the power thing, I mean, power also, like the whole creatine craze right now, how it's good for your brain. Creatine is one thing, but like power, nerve conduction velocity, that has to do with our nerve conduction. It's good for the brain too. You know what I mean? Where
mhm,
not only coordination and speed and preparing your tissues, but being able to coordinate yourself through certain movements fast is going to make your brain function better too, which is another side benefit. Like it's like you said, our bodies give us endorphins to help us, like
uh-huh,
to reward us kind of, or it's
mhm,
evolutionary advantage or whatever. Your body rewards you for like every good thing you do. It's like compound benefits. And
mhm,
you can keep that going for I always I thought about this for like, I don't know, a while now. It's like there's a lot more people into this stuff. Big minority of people, but like you'll be seeing people doing crazy things to 100, 120. I think more and more people doing that, then more people deteriorating faster. You know what I mean? It's going to be like a bigger gap between that. And
mhm,
it's all about the people who pay attention to it and people who don't. And it's worthwhile. And it's like you see people that spend a lot of their lives working their ass off to, pay the bills and everything. And then by the time they're done, their body's broken and
you
they
can't
need
enjoy
to
it as much.
start from scratch again. It's like you can't even
Yeah,
enjoy the money that you earned. And I mean, everybody has their own starting point, but it's never worth completely forgetting about. I don't care how important your job is. You maybe recondition or retool your value system because it's like if your body's
mhm.
miserable to be in and you did a good job doing this work, what's it worth, you know?
Yeah, you make $10,000,000 and have a heart attack at 50, and you planned on living in retirement at 65, and you never got there.
Yeah.
So, like, I understand what you're talking about in that sense. I think too, there's, 2 quotes I was gonna say. One of them is, I like to tell people that, like, my goal is to die young, as old as possible. That's
I
essentially what you're talking about, and then,
like that.
gosh, there's another one along those lines. But, yeah, there certainly is that the importance of, aging well and prioritizing your. Oh, I remember the second quote was, "A healthy person may have a million problems, but a sick person only has one." And that's
Yeah, yeah.
the importance of your health is, like, you might be like, "Oh, man, like, my car's in the shop." But if, like, you broke your leg, you'd be much more upset about that,
Oh
and
yeah.
you'd just be like, "Man, I'd do anything to be able to walk in." Anytime I get the cold, I remember how much I take not having a cold for granted. You know what I mean? Something as small
Yeah,
as that.
yeah.
So,
That's I do the same thing with
other
stomach bug. When I have a stomach virus, I'm
oh,
like,
same
this
here.
sucks, but I know afterwards I'm gonna feel so freaking good just being
Sure.
alive. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you as well, you mentioned, like, the shoulder post. I made a comment on that post. This is how big I know this post it must have, like, blown up and absolutely viral. I was gonna ask you about it, but I
Yeah.
have, like, 3,600 likes just on a comment I made on your post. And I'm
Yeah.
still getting notifications today. You made that post a couple weeks ago. I'm like, "When will
Yeah.
these notifications stop?" When I saw it at first, you totally tricked me, by the way. I was like, "Oh, man, he's cooked." And I knew we already had the podcast scheduled, like, my heart sank and all that stuff. Um, please talk about that post for people who don't know. Please explain what happened and how big did that post get?
So,
How many views,
yeah.
like, how many followers did you gain, all that?
I think it was like 6,000 followers or something and counting. So the whole post was I already made a post that day, but I was like in the beginning of the year I was committed to just doing a post every day no matter what. But I was Olympic lifting and I before I even did that, I was shooting around and I was got really sweaty, like more sweaty than I normally get. And I had Olympic lifting on the menu. I had heavy, like, a clean and jerk complex, and I forgot my chalk, but I had my straps in my bag. Never jerked with straps on in my life. I cleaned maybe a few handful of times with straps on, just because my grip was fried from something else. But I was sweaty. The bars at the gym I go to, I train at a gym too, so I get in public a little bit, get out of my
Mhm,
place. But the gym that I go to, the bars aren't that great. Yeah, forgot my chalk, and I'm like, "I wanna still do this." So I still do it. First attempt ever, get like 90% of the way up, drop it behind my back, and, like, I didn't even notice it in real time, and I'm like, "Oh, damn, I failed the lift." And I felt more weird because, like, I try to never slam the bar at that gym because I
Mhm.
feel weird. I'm, like, one of the only Olympic lifters that even go step foot in the gym, and, I know how annoying it is when you're just working out here, ba-boom! I was like, "Oh
Sure.
god, I gotta, like, I gotta, get the bar." If you see, like, if you watch the video, you see me turn around and, like, try to stabilize it, like, "Sorry, guys." But yeah, so I played it back and I'm like, "My shoulders got into a really weird position with that. Maybe it's something to post about." And then I was
Mhm.
like, "Okay, I'll do a couple demos while I'm there of movements that would have to do with something high power and, with that extra range." And, it was funny, I was editing in the car and I was like had Spotify, went on a radio and it kept on going and that song popped up and it was like the perfect song for it. I'm like, "Okay, that's good." And it's like as soon as I was done editing, I'm like, I don't know, the Holy Spirit just dropped me that song for no reason, but posted it and yeah, I was like, it's because I had an ankle post before that, and I was like, "Oh, this might beat my ankle post," which had like 200 and something thousand views, which is like a new record for me. And it
Mhm.
turned out like I woke up and it was like 3 million. What the hell is going
Yeah.
on here? And it turned out like I unintentionally engagement baited with my using straps for jerks because I got probably 500 comments of straight up, "Oh, why are you jerking with straps? Ditch the straps with jerks. Oh, if you shouldn't be lifting that. If you can't do it without straps, it's not you shouldn't touch it." I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And I actually like push back on some people, but I'm like, "Why am I doing this?" This is like, it was a good lesson learning and not listening to I'm like, first you didn't watch the video where it says like why I did it, but
Mhm.
either way. So I learned a lot of lessons with that one. But yeah, it's at 10 million now and I have like 500 likes and I think at the time I only had like 400 followers, not even. And it was like, I don't know, maybe 500 followers. So that was like a big deal for me, and, I didn't have, like, the infrastructure, like, 'cause people were, like, reaching out and,
Mhm.
for training and stuff, and I didn't have, like, the complete infrastructure, like, I can take one session at a time, but I had a lot of people reach out from them, and, yeah, so that was just, like, a wild ride, but uh, it was definitely not expected because I didn't even expect to post again that day.
Mhm.
It was an interesting one though. I was like, how's it even going up? My mom told my sister about it, and she's like, "Oh, RJ got like 10 million views on a post." She's like, 10 million, maybe 10,000." I never even told her. I don't even know if she knows. But yeah, it was definitely the most helpful fail I've ever had.
It's an interesting way to look at it, but, like, it definitely was, like, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade and all that stuff. As a fail, you weren't hurt, but then you actually saw opportunity with that. You shared your story, and then the comment that I made that got so many likes, nowhere near as many likes as you got, by the way, was, just saying, like, "This is the best sales pitch for your style of training."
Yeah,
Because,
yeah,
like
I appreciate that one.
yeah, but, I mean, if they just see you, I don't know, doing some pullover, like a deep fly or something like that, and they're just like, "Oh, that looks kinda weird. Why not just, like, bench and do bicep curls and, hit the treadmill and get out of there," or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
why is he doing those things? And then you show that it's like, okay, like, the body is actually resilient and adaptable if, like you say, the circles, you either expand them or you shrink them, use it or lose
Mhm.
it, right? You actually, like, train a quality to be resilient, the body will be resilient. And, a nice way that I like to teach people that is a lot of people see, like, if I do, like, a Jefferson curl, they'll be like, "Your back shouldn't do that." I'm like, "No, your back shouldn't do that."
Yeah, yeah,
Oh.
yeah, I like that one.
But,
Yeah.
like, I'll tell people, it's like, with my dad, I had to, like, kind of lead him through questions to come to this conclusion on his own. I was like, "Okay, should you lift with a rounded back?" He was like, no." I was like, "Okay. Can you touch your toes?" He's like, "Yes." And I was like, "Okay, your back's rounded. Did that hurt?" He's like, "No."
Yeah.
He's like, "No." I'm like, "If I put the 2.5 pound weight plates in your hand and you do the same thing, is that bad?" He's like, "No." I was like, "If we went to 5 pounds, is that bad?" He's like, "No." Like, "Okay. If I gave you 200 pounds right now and you did that, is that bad?" He's like, "Yes." I'm like, "Okay, so what is the issue there?" And I was
Yeah,
able just through that conversation, be like, "Oh, it's just a tolerance, resiliency issue thing. You don't have to
yeah,
start with Zercher, Jefferson deficits or something like that. Like, there's some
yeah.
freaks out there that can do that stuff with a couple
Mhm.
100 pounds. You don't have to do that. Just touching your toes or putting like 5 pound dumbbells in your hands, that's fine. And you just build that over time. You do it off a step, you go to 10 pounds, that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not saying like people should just go out there and try it, like you said in that other post, try to break
Yeah,
your
that's a
shoulder.
that's a
But
it's a
yeah,
progression.
yeah.
It's like lying bicep curl plus a, banded pass
Um,
through. You work towards those things. Eventually you could work to like maybe a light bar pass through and then you
mhm,
progress it like that. But like yeah, that's why I'm working on all like the flexion, extension, abduction, like rotation, all these things. like the pieces to the puzzle, and then eventually down the road you can do more complex things or more loaded things.
Mhm,
But it's like you're either, yeah, you're prepared for it or you're not. So
mhm,
it's like you're not going to go to a bar and squat 500 pounds if you've never squat 100
mhm,
pounds, just like the Jefferson curl. And like, I post sometimes heavy Jefferson curls, and it's like, yeah, I've worked up to that. It's more sexy. It gets certain people like interested in it, but it's
mhm,
like, yeah, you don't start there. You don't start running and you're Usain Bolt. It's you got
mhm,
to just slowly overload it. But that's the cool part about all this stuff too. It's like it really speaks to everything is just a progression. If you just keep it
mhm,
going and you have the time and energy to put into it, or even if you only have a certain amount of time, but you slowly dose it, your body adapts to it. And it's like then it's not foreign and then things are less likely to break. And yeah. But yeah, people still look at it like it's a crazy thing. And I was so long like, I joined that gym, I don't know, a couple of years ago just to get out more, and it's like,
mhm,
still everybody's doing the same thing as I left. And I was like,
mhm,
"Huh, okay, I am in my little bubble." There is not that many people training like this, and
mhm,
yeah, yeah, actually, somebody came up to the gym, the first person, only person to come up to me in real life about the post. He's like, "I saw your post," and I was like, "Oh, yeah." And he was talking about, he's like, "I got to start doing some of this stuff." And he was a strong dude. He was a college kid, or he is a college kid, and he's a strong dude. But I was like, okay, so some people are, noticing this stuff, and that's the first
mhm,
step. Like, I probably followed Range of Strength for 2 years before I actually started working with him and started like, okay, maybe I want to get the splits or whatever. So it's like,
mhm.
planting seeds, and the more and more people they see, if they follow me, they might end up getting suggested other posts. Okay, this is all possible, and it's not absurd. It's not like it's not a bad way to lift. It's actually a more diverse way to lift. It's like, you know, it's like the uh, bodybuilding is like classic bodybuilding workouts, like your chicken tenders and fries, and then you got the like strength and conditioning, and that's like a nicer entree, but it's not that fancy. But then you got you got to develop your palate a little more, and then you get the fancy 7 course meal. You might get into your weird Jefferson odd lifts, but it's like you never have to eat that all the time. But it's like it's good to expose yourself to some new things.
I always
'Cause-
like seeing yeah, I do like seeing those lifts too, like a Steinborn or something like that. The first time I ever saw it, I was like, "That's, like, the dumbest thing ever." And you hear about the history of it and hear how, like, that's how people were getting the bar off the ground when they didn't have a rack. It's either
so
Zercher or
cool.
Steinborn, and then you start
Hmm.
being like, "Oh, these people were, like, really strong and really resilient," and it's just, like, creating solutions, right? Um
Yeah.
I do like the novelty and all the different stuff and, like, what you can learn from it, but that's also keeping an open mind. I think just by having an open mind to training can make you more open-minded in life in general, just saying like, "Okay, before I just reject this," like, you see this argument between, like, conventional and unconventional training. I think it's kinda dumb. They'll be like, "Oh, kettlebells are bad for hypertrophy, bad for strength, bad for this, bad for that." It's like,
Yeah.
they're good for everything. Are they optimal for everything? No, but that's not the argument they're making. They're portable, they're versatile, they're cool. You can do a
Yeah.
lot of, like, fun momentum-based stuff with it. Sandbagged, I wish people appreciated a sandbag, it's a shoulder more than, like, a clean sometimes, or,
Yeah. It's a little more
you know
realistic.
exactly. But it's also like, I've never actually seen, like, a barbell in nature. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. There's
See
no
people like
perfectly gripped things that you pick
yeah,
something up, you're like a log
but
or
that's
something like that.
but what is it? Those, like,
Couch.
odd object lifts? You ever see, like, the Scottish guys wearing the kilts, and they're just picking up, like, these large stones and walking
Oh,
around and all that stuff?
dude, I wish I could find some stones like
Well
that. That's badass.
but, I mean, I wish people would dabble in that because they see, like, okay, there's a huge world to training, and adaptation and all that stuff, and it just makes you more versatile, better in that sense, and yeah, it's like a refined palate you're talking about, so, I think it gets
Yeah.
overcultured if you see someone do a Steinborn lift, you're like, "Alright," like, at first I was like, "This guy's kinda goofy," but maybe it's just like, in the training world, they've tasted caviar and they know what caviar is like, so I like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that analogy.
And whatever lights
Um
your fire, 'cause that could light your fire in different ways too, you know?
It can, and it's humbling. It's very humbling too. Like people will sometimes, somebody might think that even like a kettlebell snatch is stupid, and then realize, oh man, like I don't have the coordination. There's
Yeah.
a skill component to it. So, and also like you see people doing tactical snatches, and like, is that the smartest thing for training? No, but is it fun? Does it get someone to actually get outside and swing a bell around and get some sort of a stimulus rather than just sitting inside because they
Yeah.
hate front squats and they want to do front squats and or they like whatever.
Yeah. Maybe
I
they'll
like that.
readdress that in the future.
I was going to ask you, is there? So these are rapid fire questions now.
Okay, but yeah.
Is there anything you've changed your mind on recently or during your career that you wanna share, like a big change of mind?
Well, one thing, I was all like the CrossFit era of my life, which I still, took a lot from that. But I was
Mhm,
like, for a while, I was like, isolation movements are stupid. They're just vanity. Like, I was like, so like, I want to train to be an athlete or train with a purpose that I'm not even gonna, doing bicep curls is stupid. I don't want to be one of those guys at the gym. Just, you go to any commercial gym, you see 10 guys just like doing that. But now in my older life, I'm like, isolation, there's a lot of value in it. Not only for
Absolutely.
like the, biceps and triceps, but like, rotating and even quad extensions. I just spent like, I don't know, 7 years not even touching a quad extension, but I'm like, quad extensions rule. Like, you know what I mean? Like I rip, like, I mean, quad extensions, hamstring curls. I was able to maintain my Nordic by just doing like once a week, 2 sets of like 2 or 3 sets of 15 to 20 lying hamstring curls. And I
Mhm,
maintain my Nordic like hamstring curls. I can still get a set of 10 on that. I'm like, that's crazy. But either way, it's like isolate, like, especially for, I don't know, somebody who wants to get strong through a full range of motion. You're gonna have to isolate sometimes. It's not gonna be like the meat and potatoes. I still believe in like the squats and the, all the
mhm,
compound movements and all the other kinds of lift. But like isolating something to patch up a weakness or get a weaker part of you that's not going to get that exact stimulus stronger
mhm.
is well worth your time. Obviously, you probably know that now with the style of training I'm doing now, but yeah, and I'm trying to think of anything else. Uh,
It's a
yeah,
good
there's
point
probably
about isolation, like, because, people like you're talking about, say it's only for vanity and all that stuff. I think it's just to hone into a specific spot. If
yeah,
you have a compound movement and you have a weak link there, you can be like, "This is my limiting factor," and you can train that directly, and then it can actually help your compound movements.
yeah,
So
bicep
there's
curls and chin ups.
yeah, bicep curls for chin-ups, you could do tricep extensions for bench press, whatever, like,
Yeah,
just those kinds of ideas is huge. I was gonna ask, is there a major misconception in the training space that you wish to dispel?
I mean, yeah, my whole channel or my whole page is kind of dedicated to that, right? It's
Mhm,
like we are human beings that have all these sets of joints that are designed to move. None of
mhm,
them, we're talking about like the Steinborn lift people and like, Hackenschmidt and all of them. They just did what they could do with what they have. And same with people in nature. They're just using their bodies.
mhm,
They're not overthinking it. They're just like, oh, how can I achieve this goal? It's like, I'm sure it still exists a lot more than my bubble tells me, but it's like, we don't have to be boxed in by just squat, bench, dead in these certain
mhm,
things. Like we got to use our bodies, especially our spines. That's like one of the more
mhm,
undertrained things. But like our bodies are designed to move, and our spine is just a series of joints supposed to move. And yeah, it might be delicate right now, just like a dip isn't safe for somebody right now. But like working towards getting a little bit more, and it doesn't have to be a huge part of your training, but working towards a bigger movement variety. Like one time I was doing behind the neck press at a gym, different gym. I was like visiting, and a guy
mhm.
comes up to me and says like, "Oh, that's not how you should do it." I'm like, I just behind the neck press 150 pounds, and you're trying to tell me like
Yeah, you're
people just
doing
have
something
that
wrong.
ingrained in their head though. I mean,
Yeah,
like I didn't. I was kind of like, I think you could prepare for it. I wasn't like a jerk or anything, but I'm like,
yeah,
that's sad that like people think that certain movements are bad. I'll never forget
mhm,
on the like the personal trainer test or was it CSCS? I forget, but it
mhm,
was behind the neck pull down is not the right way to do it. I'm like, behind the neck pull downs kind of rip. I kind of love them. It's like they hit you in a different way. They're getting more pure adduction from like lats and your humerus is going straight down. It's just different, and it's giving you more of a movement variety. You know what I mean?
mhm,
And so it's like don't be boxed in by the what everybody else does. I mean, and just like you said, it keeps you more open minded and everything. It's like have some imagination, kind of think it through yourself because just logically speaking, it doesn't make sense. And it's just
mhm,
like that because of how culture has progressed. But now that we're exposed to these ideas and it's clearly moving that direction, think about movement as a human, not as a bodybuilder.
mhm.
Not to throw that much shade on bodybuilders. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? I said that like 3 times already. Yeah, it's just that's a stereotype. But yeah.
No, I agree 'cause that does seem to be the main thing that people focus on when they go to the gym. Going in a slightly different direction, is there a positive change that you're noticing in the health and fitness space?
I do see more and more people getting interested, more dudes trying to get flexible and girls trying to get strong because that's like the classic. It would be like guys go to the gym and bench and bicep
Yeah,
curl and girls go to yoga. It's like or
mhm,
Pilates. You know what I mean? It's like there's more of an understanding. You might have to work on your weaknesses. I'm trying to think of anything else off the top of my head, but yeah, I'd say that there's more like people interested in the different movements because there's certain people that are good living advertisements of it where they're like, okay, well, these guys are doing some pretty badass things, and whether they're trying to do it for health or for badass reasons, it's like,
mhm,
it's getting them more into using their body like it's a body and not that it's like a machine that you have to stay in the lines and you can draw on your own. You don't have to color within the lines all the time, and then it gives you more knowledge about what is good for you and not. And it's like people should be, experimenting with ideas. That's how I learned a lot of what I learned. I learned a lot of it from straight up like reading books and stuff, and the bulk of it came from me experimenting with things because I always would be like, that seems like it has value. Let me try it. And then I try it, and sometimes it was bullshit, and sometimes it was great. And then, you do that a couple hundred times, and then, you have your own framework of how to move in a way that is not exactly commonplace, but
Mhm,
it's something that makes sense. And, you see the value and you can see it with your clients or yourself, or, you know what I mean? And build off that. And that's what I think most, if not all, good coaches got to do. It's like following one system and treating it as gospel. That's the dangerous thing.
mhm,
Because you see that all the time. People get into like a culty, like this is the only thing. It's like there's one thing respecting and understanding why it works well, but like when you're like fighting with people online, like this is the right system, like oh you're not this or that. It's like okay, let's like have some imagination here.
mhm,
What's good about the system, what's bad about it, and kind of blend it into your own thing because you won't even be able to coach it if you don't understand it. So it's like
mhm,
make your own version of all good things. And a lot of times I learn from somebody who is hyper specialized, and I could take that piece and put it into my own like blend of health and performance that I think is right. And I'll resonate with somebody else better. A different coach will resonate with somebody else better. And it's not like it's not a war. It's like it could be we help everybody, we help the whole field move in a better direction by just thinking things through and, having conversations like this. And yeah.
So, yeah, I like that because I think people should audit their beliefs a little bit more, ask themselves, "Why do I think this?"
Yeah. That's a
And
good
if they
one.
don't have a good rationalization for it, then, maybe that's not the best thought to have. I like to think, "What if I'm wrong?" Like, all the time. I used to
Yeah, me
not be that
too.
way. I used to be very much like, "Oh, I read this, so I know this."
Yeah.
I read it once, so it must be true, and feel like I have to be right and someone's wrong. It's the same thing too, you're talking about different systems. I like to look at, like, where systems intersect. Maybe there's truth to where they intersect and where they're different.
Hmm.
It may just be a flavor thing, right? Or it may be
Yeah.
better in one situation rather than another as opposed to saying, "What's the perfect system?" There is no perfect system. What's the best
Yeah.
system? There may not be a best system. It may be a most appropriate for a given context. Doesn't mean it's
Yeah.
the best system for all people in all circumstances. Um, there's this guy I have a group chat with a couple coaches who are friends of mine on Instagram. We call it Run Club. We call it Run Club there 'cause one of my friends, uh, had, like, a kind of a disagreement with another coach who was saying that everybody should run. Like, every single person should run. I'm like, "No,
Hmm.
not every single person should run." Also, even if you should run, what if you hate running and you'd rather bike, you'd rather hike, you'd rather swim, you'd rather do this, that, or the
Yeah.
other? And so,
Hmm.
like, we were just, like, asking that one coach respectfully, we were just saying it's like, "Okay, what if you have, physical limitations? What if you don't have interests? What if you, like, lack this ability?" And he's like, "Oh, well, then you can just walk or jog." And I'm like, "Well, then that's not running." You know what I mean? But,
Yeah.
like, we're just, like, trying to get him to think about it, and at the end, at least I'll give that guy respect. He's able to say, "Oh, well, I just like running a lot." And I was like, "That's
Yeah.
fine." Like, we finally got there with just, like, a little conversation, pulling the thread a little bit that, like, you're allowed to say that I do this because I like it, or I don't
Yeah.
do this because I don't like it. That is actually a good justification, but doesn't mean that
That's
one is right
totally
and the other.
valid. Yeah.
Yeah, and, along those lines too, I was gonna say, we were talking about the styles and, like okay, you said you read a lot. I like that you said that, but then you also did the thing. So many people miss that. I mean, in
Hmm.
coaching, it feels like we have a lot of, like, pencil necks, glass backs, nerds, whatever you wanna say, and then you have a lot of heads who are kinda dummies and all that stuff, and it's like, be both, right? Like, be
Yeah.
both.
Mm.
Read it, try it, come to your own conclusions, but I like the statement or the phrase, "Knowledge without application isn't knowledge. To know and not to do is not to know." And the meaning is, like, you can just say,
Preach.
"Yeah, I know," but it's just
Yeah.
like, if you know, but you're not doing it, then, like, you clearly don't know enough.
Yeah, exactly. If you really understood it, you'd be like, I got to do this.
Yeah, but that's the thing is, like, you can't actually know something in the training world until, in my opinion, you've actually tested it out. You've actually, you felt what you're supposed to feel and all that stuff. And like you said, there's things where I would try. I used to do exploratory sessions, an entire hour workout, maybe once a week, where it's just like I compiled a bunch of stuff off Instagram that I was like
Yeah,
excited
yeah.
about off YouTube. And I just tried it all out. And I'm like, this is great. This is dumb. Some things I thought were brilliant, stupid. Some things I thought that were stupid, brilliant. It's just like it's
Hmm.
definitely worth exploring like you're talking about, and, we're coming up on time. I just wanted to ask you okay, if you could give a final piece of advice to anybody about absolutely anything, what would that piece of advice be?
Oh, I wish I prepared for this one. Yeah, yeah, just try things yourself, mess up, and then learn from that. I guess it's kind of going off what we just talked about. It's
Yeah.
the only way to really learn something is to try it, and you either fail or you succeed, and then you learn from it. And if you spend too much time analyzing, and I'm guilty of it too sometimes,
Mhm.
then you won't do it, and then you won't learn from it, and then that's being an idiot sometimes is good because you just keep trying things. But you got to be a smart idiot. You got to keep going. Do stuff. Don't overthink it. Learn from it, and then you build off that. In any domain, really, it's like you got to keep trying things, or you're going to become stale. And you won't reach your potential, or you might close yourself off to experiences that might be awesome. But yeah, find out the hard way.
I like that. There's so many people that, like I sometimes have clients, and this is, like, a struggle that I have, and I have to push them and all that stuff. I have some people that very few clients where they're so motivated, you almost have to pull them back sometimes for their own safety and benefit and all that stuff, but most of them,
Yeah,
it's like well, I won't even say clients. I'll just say, like, even people who buy supplements but then don't train hard or something like that, I think they
yeah,
wanna feel like they're doing something. I read this book, right? And they taught
hmm,
me 10 skills, but then I've never actually applied the skills, but I read the book, and it's like,
yeah,
it you can read a communication book and then still talk to people like they're pieces of trash and all that stuff, and it's like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I mean, no, I like that you say that because the doing is maybe even more than half the battle. It's like you have all this knowledge and you've made no change. What was the point of it, right? So I
yeah,
appreciate you saying that the doing is so important, and you also learn from, like you said, failure. Failure to me is feedback. It's not the end of the line. Right? So, like, and it
yeah.
can be. I guess it can be if you're trying to like jump over a cliff and then like you fall.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe think maybe don't be that stupid. Yeah, have a governor on your stupidity.
Yeah, along those lines, like, I do think that failure is just feedback to be able to be like, what went right, what went wrong, that kind of stuff. It's not always what is it? They say like the difference between like a winner and a loser is like the winner wins one more time than they lost, or like you can lose 1,000
Yeah,
times if you
you're a
win
quote
1,001 and you
machine.
win it. Oh, I
Yeah, yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah.
But
It's
yeah,
awesome.
um,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
really appreciate your time. I was gonna ask if you wanted to plug yourself, your business, your Instagram and all that stuff for your
yeah.
clients, where can
Just
people find you?
yeah. Right now, just strong through full range. I have a website, but it's just bare bones right now. But yeah, I'm working on programs to introduce people to my work where they can just buy it and run the program. That's in the works. But aside from that, yeah, just my Instagram. DM me if you are interested in anything that I have to offer or you got any questions. But yeah, man, it was a fun talk. That was
Good,
good.
I appreciate it. Thank you, RJ.
Yeah,
Cool.
my pleasure.